I stand on the shoulders of a long tradition of painters. Some of my favorites, of course, being Titian, Tiepolo, Joshua Reynolds, Copley, John Singer Sargent, some of the great power points within the history of art. My name is Kehinde Wiley, and I'm an artist. I'm a painter. My job as an artist is simply to ask who deserves to be on the great museum walls. I select models plucked off the street.
Excuse me, can I ask you guys a question real quick?
These moments of absolute chance that then become exploded into large-scale historical paintings. As a young child, never seeing people who quite look like me. What you notice is an immense amount of powdered wigs and jewels and lapdogs. There's a pomp and circumstance surrounding the celebration of an individual. What I wanted to do in my own work was to be able to borrow that sense of dignity, that sense of entitlement, where an artist says that you matter. I ask each model to go through art history books, to look at the poses, and to choose who they want to be. So in a sense, what you're looking at is not just a depiction of an individual. You're looking at the history of posing. You're looking at what used to be the body language for power and dignity in the art history, but also what resonates with young black and brown men in the streets of New York in the 21st century. One of the greatest blessings as an artist is to be able to wake up every morning and to be able to change the agenda.
Okay, so today we're going to do portraits inspired by the artist Kehinde Wiley. You're going to need a couple of things before you can get started. The first thing is a self-portrait, so if you don't have one taken already, you can use your camera. You want to think a little bit about your pose and what you're doing, and I recommend turning your iPad vertically or tall up and down so you have a portrait paper orientation. And then we're also going to need to go into Safari and do a Google image search of vintage wallpaper. Vintage, V-I-N-T-A-G-E, wallpaper. And then make sure you've switched it to images so you get a bunch of pictures. And find something that you like, but that also reminds you of Kehinde Wiley's work. Once you see one that you like, you can click on it. And then hold your finger down on the bigger image and click on Add to Photos, and that will save it to your camera roll. I recommend getting 2 or 3 in case you don't like one of them or it doesn't work. And once you have a self-portrait and a couple of vintage wallpapers saved, then you can go in and open up Sketchbook. Okay, you're going to want to get a new sketch, so Menu, New Sketch. And if you still have a square shaped, you want to go click on presets in the screen resolution. 1 is the normal size, and then create. Save to gallery if you want to save it. 2-finger pinch your paper and turn it vertically, or turn your iPad vertically, but I do need these to be in portrait paper orientation. Your paper tall up and down, very important. And then I'm going to go into my camera roll and import. Click on the wallpaper that I like. Make sure you 2-finger stretch it out to make it bigger. If it doesn't fit big enough, you can either try a different one or click on Done and go in and use this transform tool and stretch it again. Sometimes when you do that though, it gets real pixelated, so if you don't like the way that works, use a different one. Okay, that looks better. Next, we're going to go up and import our self-portrait. So there we go, mountains with the plus sign. Click on the self-portrait that you like. Stretch it somewhat bigger. You don't want to cover up all of your wallpaper, but you do want to have a nice size. And then you're going to want to put this down at the bottom of the page because the bottom of yourself is cut off. You don't want to be floating in the middle of the page. Once you have it how you like it, click Done. And then we're going to click on the picture of ourselves and turn this opacity down so that we can still see the picture, but it's not as dark. That will help me outline. Another thing that may be helpful is to come and click on the little eyeball and hide your wallpaper so that you can see a clearer image of yourself. And then one of the most important things that's easiest to forget is that we want to be working on a blank layer. So I can either hit the plus sign to add a layer, or I have a blank one down here. I'm just gonna hold my finger on it till it's selected and drag it up. But super important that you do all of your drawing and coloring on a new blank layer above your work. And then I already have my technical pen, turn my color down to black, and then I'm just gonna zoom in and start outlining details. Now you wanna think of a variety of line width, which can be adjusted right here, okay? You're not going to be outlining bigger shapes like the edges of your face with as big of a line as you might do something like your eyebrows. So, excuse me, thicker and thinner lines depending on what you're outlining. And we are going to be paint bucketing this in later. So make sure that you are closing off shapes. Okay, and it's much easier to, do that as you're drawing than to have to go back and do a bunch of it later. So close off your shapes as you're drawing them. And I'm just gonna continue paying attention to my line width and get as detailed as I can to do a contour line drawing the edges of my shapes. Detailed portrait of myself. Okay, I tried to get all of my bigger shapes really filled in with the thicker line. Now I'm going to turn down and do a thinner line and add some of those smaller details. Okay, that looks pretty good. I can go in here and click on this little, this little eyeball and hide my image to kind of see. I'm going to look really closely to make sure that I have shapes closed off while I still have my black technical pen. That will help a lot when I'm paint bucketing. Okay, and I think that looks pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to go in and I'm going to unhide, click the eyeball to unhide this, and I'm going to go in and pick up some skin tone. So I can pick up a skin tone by clicking and holding till the crosshairs come up, till you can see that color is now selected. Or if I click on my color button here, here's the eyedropper here. I can select it that way. And I'm going to just go in and start filling in things, realistic colors. So paint bucket, make sure I get back up here to my drawing layer and start bucketing in. That's a little bit too light, so I'm going to try my dropper again. Sometimes I'll select another color that I've used and then go back to my color button and adjust it slightly lighter or darker and make my own shades. That tends to work nicely as well. And just continue filling in realistic colors on my self-portrait. Okay, this looks good. I'm going to hide my picture by clicking on the eyeball again, unhide my wallpaper and see how it looks, see if there's anything I missed or if I need to make changes. Sometimes Kehinde Wiley has parts of the wallpaper that crops out or creeps out in front of parts of the portrait. If you can figure out a way to do that and you would like to do that, that's a fun idea. I can't wait to see your Wiley-inspired self-portraits. Have fun.